there's no power, I'll need to come up with a way to provide it with electricity.
Someone has seen to it that the snowshoes, they are beyond repair, and now quite useless. Quite interesting.
I won't find anything else in there. I'm sure I can piece these back together. There, it is complete. I will carefully place it into my scrapbook for further study. The door is locked. It's locked fast. Klaus's passport. I'll put it with the others.
Quite interesting. Quite interesting.
Here! What do you think you're doing?
I would like a piece of coal.
Would you? And what of the other passengers?
As a representative of Monsieur Boost, I will take it.
Fine! Take it. Take all of it. The rest of us can freeze. Please! You must help me! My stomach!
Do you need a doctor?
No! I need food! I am wasting away!
I'm sure if you went to the restaurant car, the chef would fix you something.
You do not understand. Klaus, the chef de cuisine is a master. His meat, his sauces, but even the tenderest meat must be chewed.
Yes, that is true.
I am a busy man. I work hard. I have little time for frivolities.
Frivolities?
It is. You will pardon me. I had not brushed my teeth since before the Great War. The dentists in Istanbul are fiends. This one, he does not cure me. No. He yanks my teeth out. But the new teeth he has made do not fit properly. Adjustments are needed. He sends them to Trieste. But the train will pass through Trieste in only 2 days. I can survive for 2 days on soup. Now we may be stranded here for a week or more. Remember 1929? It has happened. It can happen again.
Monsieur needs...
Meat.
And to chew it?
Teeth. Once I have eaten, I will be in your debt forever. Ask anything of me.
Monsieur, today is your lucky day. I have teeth for you.
I have little to offer you in return. I know nothing of the murder, but thank you so much. But it is magic. These are much better than mine. Where did you find it?
You may now dine. That is all you need to know.
Thank you.
I confess that your logic, it escapes me. Your current cost... Oh, Mama.
That isn't such a good idea. Monsieur, I have desperate need of your hammer.
I would do anything for you, mademoiselle, after the service you've done for me. But I need that hammer to check the boiler pressure. If you can find me an adequate replacement, then it is yours.
I have something I think will be adequate to replace your magnificent hammer.
What a wonderful object. This will do nicely. Please take the hammer with my compliments.
This must be where the steam is escaping. It's quite hot, even from a distance. I would like a key to the baggage car.
Please, take one of mine.
Why do you have more than one key to the baggage car?
I often assist with the loading and unloading at the smaller stations. Sometimes I must loan a key to the handlers.
Please give me the key to the Athens-Paris coach.
Here is mine. Keep it as long as you like.
That will be enough, Pierre. The key fit perfectly. The key worked. These goods are being shipped. They do not belong to anyone currently on the train. This contains nothing that would be of use to me.
Quite interesting. Mademoiselle, observe. The lid, it is secured with 4 nails. Quite interesting. Your current course of action?
The nails were loose. Peculiar. Well, what do we have here? I'd better put the lid back on for appearances. It's the cargo manifest. It shows that 3 casks were loaded in Belgrade, 1 of olive oil, 1 of honey, and 1 of vinegar. It also mentions a special security package that was loaded in Istanbul. A keg of white wine vinegar. Salonika olive oil, a keg of Greece's finest. I've heard of this honey. It's reported to be quite good. It looks terrible out there. This seems to be a security door. It certainly lives up to its name. It's locked. The woods look menacing and dangerous.
No, the snow, it is much too deep to cross without the snowshoes.
Nothing a little elbow grease can't undo.
Mille pardon, mademoiselle. Does nothing strike you as... Remember, mademoiselle, you are the intruder here, not the wolf. It is senseless to harm the creature.
The gunshot seems to have frightened him off. I'm not sure what I expect to find wandering around out here. So many paths. It would be easy for me to get lost out here.
Remember, mademoiselle, you are the intruder here, not the wolf. It is senseless to harm the creature.
The gunshot seems to have frightened him off.
Here in the middle of nowhere.
A dear. I should leave her alone. She's got enough to worry about with all the wolves around.
A shepherd's hut. Probably only used when the snow it is gone and he brings his sheep up to the high pasture.
The door is locked.
One of the bars appears to be quite loose. Would you not say so, mademoiselle? Fantastique. Oh, mademoiselle. What is this? A second passkey? So, the mystery of how a murderer may pass through the locked doors? It is now explained.
An antique stove. I haven't seen one of these in years. Wonderful. That should hold, at least until we are rescued. Not a bad job, if I do say so myself. The heat is now restored. Now on to the matter of murder. That isn't going to help. The spout fits perfectly. The valve prevents it from pouring until turned. This spout fits just as well as the first. I filled the tumbler with vinegar. I filled the tumbler with olive oil. These menu cards are perfect for collecting fingerprints.
disturb me. I do not have enough vinegar or olive oil for the Count and Countess. I will be shamed.
Well, I never. I have the olive oil and vinegar you need for tonight's meal.
Let me see them. Yeah, this olive oil is fresh enough and of sufficient quality. The quality of this vinegar will have to do, but there is not nearly enough. Tell me at once where you found it.
In the baggage car.
There must be far more vinegar for the authentic Elderfeld salad. I will get it myself.
That will do nicely. Loaves of bread. They smell lovely. I believe they are sacks of flour, good for thickening sauces. And judging by last night's sauce, Klaus will get through both sacks before the trip is through. I'd better close this. I wouldn't like to waste fuel. Such a cramped kitchen. I can't imagine how Klaus puts up with it. I would like to fingerprint you.
Ach, fine. Do as you must.
These goods are being shipped. They do not belong to anyone currently on the train. I'm sorry to disturb you.
Not at all. As you can see, I'm not exactly occupied at the moment. And I do know you're helping that funny little Belgian detective. What can I do for you?
May I have your passport, please?
It's in my compartment. Feel free to collect it.
Your full name, permanent address, and age, please.
Mary Hermione Debenham, 32. I'm between permanent addresses at the moment.
What can you tell me of the murder last night?
I'm afraid I have nothing to tell you. I went to bed and slept.
You seem very at ease. Are you not distressed by what has happened?
Distressed? I have not really thought about it from that point of view. No, I cannot say that I am at all distressed. After all, people die every day.
They die, yes, but murder is thankfully a little more rare. Were you acquainted with Monsieur Ratchet?
I saw him for the first time at dinner last night. Oh, I suppose at the station, perhaps. I don't recall.
How did he strike you?
I hardly noticed him.
He did not strike you as an evil personality?
Really, I cannot say I thought about it. Whether or not I liked Mr. Ratchet's face does not seem to be helpful in finding out who killed him.
I'd like to take your fingerprints.
How very enterprising of you. How do we proceed?
I have some typewriter ribbon.
Splendid. This is all rather exciting.
Do you know who Monsieur Ratchet really was?
Haven't a clue. Who was he?
Cassetti, the man behind the Armstrong kidnapping.
That was quite abominable.
Where did you begin your journey?
Baghdad.
What were you doing there?
I have been acting as governess to 2 children.
What is your final destination?
London. I'm giving up on Baghdad. Not much happens there. I'm hoping to find a suitable post in London.
What can you tell me about Mademoiselle Schmidt?
She's a nearly perfect traveling companion. Quiet, polite, thinks the world of her princess.
What is the color of her dressing gown?
Her dressing gown? It's dark blue. Flannel.
Did Mademoiselle Schmidt leave your compartment at any time during the night?
She was with the princess, reading, I believe, until quite late. I awoke when she returned. I remember thinking she was not paid enough for such long hours and checked my watch. It was 12:38.
How well do you know Colonel Arbuthnot?
That's a very impertinent question. And I'll not answer it.
Au revoir, Mademoiselle Debenham. Count Andrigny, I am acting on behalf of Monsieur Hercule Poirot in this matter. May I speak with you?
I quite understand your position. I will do anything I can to assist you.
May I have your passport, please?
Yes, certainly.
Rudolph Joseph Andrigny, aged 34. A diplomatic passport.
Yes, I am in the Hungarian consular service.
Wife, Elena Maria Andrigny, aged 20.
Yes, we have only been married a year.
Aged 20, thank you. Are you aware of the identity of the deceased, monsieur?
If you want to know his name, surely it is in his passport.
The name on his passport is Ratchet. That is not his real name. He is in fact Cassetti, who was responsible for the kidnapping and death of a child in America.
Ah, that certainly should throw light upon the matter.
Have you been to America, Monsieur Lecomte?
Yes, I was in Washington for a year. Extraordinary country.
Did you know the Armstrong family?
The kidnapped victims.
Yes.
Armstrong. It is difficult to recall. So many diplomatic functions, so many hands to shake. I cannot recall. I'm sorry.
Can you tell me how you spent the evening after dinner last night?
We had my wife's compartment made up while we were at dinner. On returning, we sat up in mine playing piquet. At about 11 o'clock, my wife retired for the night. The attendant made up my compartment, and I also went to bed.
I'd like to take your fingerprints.
Whatever you need to do, I will be happy to cooperate.
The sudden stop of the train awakened you?
Naturally. I learned from the attendant of the avalanche, then went into my wife and comforted her.
When did you return to your own compartment?
Well, I didn't, actually. That is to say, I did not like to leave my wife alone after the shock. We passed the remainder of the night together.
Other than the train stopping, did you notice anything unusual?
No, I don't think so. I dropped off to sleep sometime before 2 a.m. and slept through until this morning.
You didn't hear the commotion in the compartment next to yours? The American lady who occupies it had quite an attack of hysterics and rang repeatedly for the attendant.
When was this?
At approximately 1:15.
No, I'm afraid I didn't notice.
Do you smoke, Monsieur Lecomte?
The occasional cigar only. They are always offered to me, you understand, but I do not much like them.
Merci, Monsieur le Comte. Countess, may I ask you some questions regarding the death of Monsieur Ratchet?
I'm not sure what I can do to help, but I'll try.
Have you been to America?
No, mademoiselle. My husband was posted there. Diplomatic duties. But we were not married then.
What is the color of your dressing gown?
Why do you ask me that?
Detectives have to ask all sorts of questions. Forgive me.
It is yellow. Corn-colored chiffon. Are you really a detective, mademoiselle? I was told you worked for the railway.
Well, I'm assisting a detective. That's what I meant.
Is he a Yugoslavian detective?
I think he would tell you he belongs to the world, madame. May I take your fingerprints?
Yes.
When did you fall asleep last night?
Soon after 1 o'clock, I believe.
Did you hear or see anything unusual last evening?
After the train stopped?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
You didn't hear Mrs. Hubbard ringing her bell and calling out at around 1:15?
No, it would be very unlikely if I did. I'm sorry.
That will do for now, Countess. May I have your passport, please?
Oui, mademoiselle. You will find it in room 1-2 in the Athens-Paris coach.
What can you tell me of your movements after dinner?
I came in here to attend to the bar after everyone went to their rooms. I cleaned the salon car and went to the Athens-Paris coach to rest.
What time was that?
I closed the bar at midnight, so it would be a few minutes after that.
Did you see or hear anything unusual last night?
No, mademoiselle. The Athens-Paris coach was very quiet. And of course, the door leading to the Calais coach is locked. One can pass through only if Pierre Michel or Matteo opens it for him.
What do you know of Klaus, the chef?
An artiste de la cuisine, and just as temperamental as a painter. Vous comprenez? No one is allowed to enter his kitchen.
His menu seems to overemphasize meat dishes.
It is true that. They call him Le Boucher, but not to his face, of course.
The butcher. It suits him. I would like to take your fingerprints.
I see. Very well, then.
Klaus seems even more temperamental than usual today.
I fear an approaching catastrophe, mademoiselle.
Worse than avalanches and murder?
Certainement. Special dinner menus, as you no doubt know, are printed in advance of our departure in Istanbul. Here is tonight's menu. As you can see, tonight is to serve Wiener Schnitzel and Eldafe Salat, native dishes of Austria, in honor of the Count and Countess Andrani.
Veal and potatoes. Why does this not surprise me?
But so many have asked for the salads, almost in defiance of Chef Klaus, and the porters have failed to put aboard enough vinegar and olive oil for the Eldafe Salat. Klaus is in a rage. The embarrassment will be too much for him.
What do you know of Klaus's movements last night?
As usual, he stayed in his precious kitchen, preparing his pastries and sauces for the next day's meals. He passed through the salon car a few minutes before midnight in a rage because one of the steak knives is missing. Passengers will take anything as a souvenir if it is not bolted down. Why, the things that have gone missing on this trip would astound you.
But perhaps they were not all taken as souvenirs. Perhaps some person, in order to do good, borrowed them?
Mademoiselle, forgive me, but I do not understand what you are talking about.
Let it pass. What did Klaus do after he entered the salon car?
Nothing. We went together to the Athens-Paris coach.
Do you know Monsieur Ratchet was killed with a knife?
I had heard this, oui, but why? You think Klaus may have stabbed him?
A chef that temperamental? If someone was to criticize his masterpieces?
Mais non, mademoiselle. C'est très absurd. Klaus would not stab anyone. Not with a knife. He would hack them into little medallions with his cleaver.
That will be enough. Monsieur Foscarelli.
Ah, signorina! I have been told you aid the great Hercule Poirot in his investigations. I will help you in any way I can.
May I have your passport, please?
Of course, of course! Here you are!
You are Antonio Foscarelli. I see here you are a naturalized American citizen.
Yes, signorina. It is better for my business. I am, as you can see, a salesman of motor cars. I do big business. I am up to date. I understand salesmanship.
What do you smoke? A pipe, cigarettes, cigars?
Cigarettes only.
I would like to take your fingerprints.
Of course, of course. Anything to help.
Thank you. You travel frequently to and from the United States?
Yes, for the past 10 years or so.
Did you ever come across Monsieur Ratchet?
Never, but I know the type. Oh, yes. It is very respectable, very well dressed, but underneath it is all wrong. I should say he was a big crook. I give you my opinion for what it is worth.
Your opinion is quite right. Monsieur Ratchet was Cassetti, the kidnapper.
What did I tell you? I have learned to read the face. It is necessary. Only in America do they teach you the proper way to sell.
Please tell me your movements last night after dinner.
With pleasure. I stay here in the salon car for a while. It is more amusing. I play cards with the American gentleman who sells the typewriter ribbons. We talk shop. Afterwards, we retire to my compartment and play the cards some more. And talk more shop. That one, though, he is not the salesman Foscarelli is, I can tell you.
Do you remember the Armstrong case?
I do not quite remember, but yes. The name, it was a little girl, was it not? A baby, una bambina.
Yes.
Ah, well, these things, they happen, even in a great country like America.
Have you ever come across any members of the Armstrong family?
It is difficult to say. I see so many people, you understand. I'll give you some figures. Last year alone, I sold...
Please, monsieur, confine yourself to the point.
With a great pleasure.
What time did you go to your compartment?
Oh, it was early. 8:30 or so.
What time did you stop playing cards in your room?
Not yet 10 o'clock. That stuffed shirt of a valet who shares the compartment with me came back from attending his master. A miserable people, the English. Not sympathetic. He sits in the corner, very stiff, reading a book. Mr. Hardman and I, we lose our taste for the cards, and Mr. Hardman, he goes off to his own room. The attendant makes up our beds.
What time did you go to bed?
I lay on my bunk for a while. The Englishman has, I think, the toothache. He gets out a little bottle of stuff that smells very strong. He moans and groans. I drop off around 10:30. Whenever I wake, I hear him groaning.
Do you know if Monsieur Masterman left the room at all during the night?
I do not think so. If the door opened, the light from the corridor, one wakes up automatically thinking it is the customs examination at some frontier.
Did Monsieur Masterman ever speak of his master?
I tell you, he did not speak, even to introduce himself. He was not as sympathetic, a fish.
Thank you, Monsieur Foscarelli.
Yes, miss?
Monsieur Masterman?
Yes.
My name is Antoinette Marceau. I'm assisting Monsieur Poirot in his inquiries.
Yes, the attendant has explained that to me. The service is quite good, I must say. I prize good service highly, of course. My compliments.
Thank you. I would like to ask you some questions.
Yes, I expect you would. I shall help in any way I can.
You are the valet of Monsieur Ratchet.
Yes,
May I have your passport, please?
of course. Here you are.
Your full name, age, and address.
Edward Henry Masterman, 51, 21 Friar Street, Clerkenwell.
When did you last see Monsieur Ratchet?
It must have been about 9:35 or 9:40 last night, miss.
I'd like to take your fingerprints.
That's a rather messy procedure, isn't it? Do you have something I might wipe my hands on afterwards?
Yes, I do.
Napkins? A wet cloth was beyond your capabilities? Well, I suppose they will have to do.
Thank you. Can you tell me what happened when you saw Monsieur Ratchet?
I went into Mr. Ratchet as usual, miss, and attended to his wants.
What were your duties exactly?
To fold or hang up his clothes, miss. Put his dental plate in water and see that he had everything he needed.
Was his manner the same as usual?
Well, miss, I think he was upset.
In what way upset?
Over a letter he'd been reading. He asked me if it was I who had put it in his compartment. Of course, I told him I hadn't done any such thing, but he swore at me and found fault with everything I did.
Did your master ever take a sleeping draught?
Always when traveling by train, miss. He said he couldn't sleep otherwise. Even the Express affected him, I am sorry to say.
Did he take it last night?
I poured it into a glass and put it on the table for him, though I didn't actually see him drink it.
Was it unusual for him to swear at you?
Oh no, miss. He lost his temper easily. It just depended what had happened to upset him.
Do you know what drug he was in the habit of taking?
I couldn't say I'm sure, miss. There's no name on the bottle. Just sleeping draught and to be taken at bedtime.
When was his usual bedtime? When aboard the train?
Midnight, miss, or later. With the avalanche last night, I fancy he wouldn't fall asleep until closer to 1.
Did you mix his usual dose of the sleeping draught?
A half dose only, miss, at Mr. Ratchet's request. I can't say the reason.
What happened next?
I asked him if there was anything else he required. He asked me to send for Mr. McQueen. Then I left him.
Was Monsieur Ratchet an early riser?
It depended, miss, upon his mood. Sometimes he'd get up for breakfast. Sometimes he wouldn't get up till just on lunchtime. I would wait until the attendant came to collect me.
Did you know that your master had enemies?
Yes, miss. I had heard him discussing some disquieting letters with Mr. McQueen.
Did you like your employer, Masterman?
I should hardly like to say that, miss. He was a generous employer.
But you didn't like him.
Shall we put it that I don't care very much for Americans, miss?
Do you know of any bad blood between your master and Monsieur McQueen?
No, miss. Mr. McQueen was a very pleasant gentleman. For an American.
How long have you been with Monsieur Ratchet?
Just over 9 months, miss. Before that, I was with Sir Henry Tomlinson in Grosvenor Square. I was with him for several years before he left for East Africa.
Have you ever been in America?
No, miss.
Do you remember the Armstrong kidnapping case?
Well, yes, I remember reading something about it. A little baby girl, wasn't it? Very shocking affair. But what has that...
Your employer, Monsieur Ratchet, was the man behind the kidnapping.
I'm at a loss for words, miss. I can hardly believe it.
Are you a pipe smoker?
No, miss. I only smoke cigarettes. Gaspers, miss.
What did you do after leaving your master?
I told Mr. McQueen, miss, that the master wanted him. Then I came along here to my compartment and read. I was in bed by 10:30.
Who do you share this room with?
A big Italian fellow.
Does he speak English?
A kind of English, miss. He's been in America. Chicago, I understand. He was in here playing cards with another American, a Mr. Hardman. The game broke up soon after I entered, and Mr. Hardman left.
Do you and the Italian gentleman talk together much?
No, miss. I prefer to read. At present, I'm quite enjoying Love's Captive by a Mrs. Arabella Richardson. At about 10:30, the Italian fellow wanted to go to bed, so the attendant came in and made the beds up.
Did you go to bed then?
I went to bed, but I didn't sleep, miss. I had a toothache.
I am so sorry. Was your toothache painful?
Most painful, miss. I applied some oil of cloves, which relieved the pain a little, but I still was not able to get to sleep. I turned the light on over my berth and continued to read, to take my mind off of it, as it were.
You did not sleep at all?
I finally dropped off about 4 this morning.
Did the Italian gentleman sleep?
Him? Oh, he snored. I confess I envied Mr. Ratchet his sleeping draft, miss.
Did your companion leave the compartment at all during the night?
No, miss.
Did you leave the compartment at all?
No, miss.
Did you hear anything during the night?
I don't think so, miss. The train being at a standstill made it all very quiet.
That will be enough.
Regardez, mademoiselle. Et voilà.
This is neither...
Say, this is mighty nice. What can I do for you?
My name is Antoinette Marceau. I'm assisting Monsieur Poirot with his investigation. You know the name, perhaps?
It does seem familiar, only I always thought it was a dressmaker.
Monsieur, for all our sakes, please do not repeat that in front of Monsieur Poirot. Do you promise me?
I think I just about promised you anything. Oh, darn it, there I go, sounding like Mr. Ratchet. You had enough of him, I expect, at the market in Istanbul. I didn't mean anything by it except it's the truth. I love your accent. A little bit of British, a little bit of French, a lot of heaven. Darn it, there I go again.
It is not a problem, monsieur, but we must be serious now, don't you agree?
Serious, yes. Yes, of course.
You are Monsieur Ratchet's secretary?
Yes, for just over a year now. I met him in Persia. I'd come over from New York to look into an oil concession. I don't suppose you want to hear all about that. Getting oil out of Persia can get pretty difficult these days. Anyway, my friends and I had been let in rather badly over it. Mr. Ratchet was in the same hotel. He just had a row with his secretary, so he offered me the job. He was collecting antiquities, but not knowing any languages, was having kind of a hard time of it. I was pretty down and out, so I jumped at it.
What can you tell me about Monsieur Ratchet?
The actual truth is, Miss Marceau, it is Miss, isn't it? Wait, don't have to answer. None of my business. The truth is, I don't know anything about him. He never spoke of himself or his life in America.
May I have your passport, please?
Sure. Here you go.
What is your full name, age, and address?
Hector Willard McQueen. I'm 28. You're about what, 24, 25?
Your address, Monsieur McQueen?
That's right, Hector. Always saying the wrong thing. That's me. I live at 58 Warren Street, New York.
You must have formed some theory about him, Monsieur McQueen.
Well, yes, I did. For one thing, I don't believe Ratchet was his real name. I think he left America in order to escape from someone or something. I think he was successful until a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, what happened then?
He began to get letters, threatening letters.
I would like to take your fingerprints.
Would you really? Say, that's swell. I mean, of course you can.
Did you see these threatening letters?
Yes, it was part of my job to attend to his correspondence.
Do you still have the letters?
I've still got a couple in my files.
How did Monsieur Ratchet act when he received the first letter?
It's difficult to say. He passed it off with a laugh in that quiet way of his. But somehow, I felt that there was a good deal going on underneath the quietness.
Did you know that Monsieur Ratchet had asked Monsieur Poirot to help him?
No, I had no idea.
Did you like your employer?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I can't exactly say. He was usually quite pleasant in his manner. I'll tell you the truth. Antoinette, sorry, Miss Marceau, I disliked and distrusted him. He was, I am sure, A cruel and dangerous man.
Were you on good terms with your employer?
This is where I'm supposed to go all goose-fleshy and shifty-eyed, right? Like some thriller? You got nothing on me. And so on. Yeah, sorry, but Ratchet and I were on perfectly good terms.
When did you last see Monsieur Ratchet alive?
Last evening about 10 o'clock, I guess. Masterman fetched me. Mr. Ratchet wanted me to take down some memoranda for him.
On what subject?
Some pottery he'd bought, and a statue we were bringing back to Paris with us. It's in the baggage car.
Monsieur McQueen, you are correct. Ratchet was an alias.
I knew it! Who was he?
He was Cassetti, the man behind several notorious kidnapping cases, including the famous affair of little Daisy Armstrong.
That damn skunk! If I'd known that, I'd have cut off my right hand before I'd write another letter for him. May he burn in hell.
I didn't mean to upset you.
I have reason to be upset. My father was the district attorney who handled the case. I saw Mrs. Armstrong more than once. She was a lovely woman, so gentle and heartbroken. If ever a man deserved what he got, Cassetti's the guy. I'm rejoicing. A man like that wasn't fit to live.
You almost feel you could have murdered him yourself?
I do. Seems I'm kind of incriminating myself here.
Can you describe your movements last night?
Let's see. I fell into conversation with that Englishman, Colonel Arbuthnot. Then I went to take down some memoranda for letters Mr. Ratchet wanted written, like I told you. When I came out, the colonel was down the hall waiting while the attendant made up his bed. He came along back to my room here, and we discussed world politics. The government of India, the Wall Street crisis. I don't, as a rule, cotton much to Britishers. They're a stiff-necked lot. But Arbuthnot is all right.
Did you hear or see anyone in the corridor while you were talking?
Let's see. Yes. The attendant passed along once from the direction of the restaurant car. I caught a glimpse of his uniform. Then I do remember some woman in a silk, scarlet something or other. Again, just a glimpse. She was headed the other way, towards the restaurant car.
Did you see her return?
No. Now that you mention it, I don't think I did. But I suppose she must have.
What time was it that the colonel left you?
Pretty late. Getting on for 2 o'clock, I'd say.
You were together when the train stopped?
Yeah, shook me up a bit. But the colonel was as cool as ice water. He's been in some tough scrapes, I'd guess. A near train wreck didn't even make him blink.
What happened after Colonel Arbuthnot said goodnight?
I called the attendant to make up my bed, and then hit the sack.
What sack did you hit, and why?
I went to bed. Slept till morning.
Do you smoke a pipe, Monsieur McQueen?
Nope. Don't smoke at all, as a matter of fact. I know they say it's healthy, but I don't believe them.
During the evening, did you leave the train at all?
Only when Arbuthnot and I got out at Belgrade to stretch our legs. When we saw you. But it was bitterly cold, so we hopped back on again.
Which door did you use?
The one closest to here.
Do you remember if the door you used was bolted?
Yes, I seem to remember it was. At least there was a kind of bar that fitted across the handle.
Did you replace the bar when you returned to the train?
You know, I don't think I did. I remember now. I left it unbolted for you. Say, listen, since we know that Ratchet was really that swine Cassetti, there's something you should know.
Yes?
One night, late, after he'd received those threatening letters, I heard him working at my typewriter. He never did that. He always dictated his letters to me. From then on, wherever we were, he insisted on access to the safe. Whatever that document was, it was important enough that he traveled with it wherever we went. If there wasn't a safe available, he had one installed. I know for a fact he had one installed in the security room in the baggage car. I saw it when we were loading his crate.
Do you have the combination?
If he didn't trust me to type it for him, you really think he'd give me the combination?
Thank you most kindly, Monsieur McQueen. I'll put this into my scrapbook so I can take a closer look at it later.
Yes, Fräulein.
Frau Schmidt, I am helping Monsieur Poirot in the investigation of Monsieur Ratchet's death. Will you assist me?
If I can.
May I have your passport?
Yeah, here it is.
You are Hildegard Schmidt, aged 43, living in St. Petersburg?
Where I attend Madame la Princesse, yeah.
What can you tell me of your movements last night after dinner?
I moved very little. I read to the princess Bleak House by the English writer Charles Dickens. The sudden stopping of the train interrupted us. Madame la Princesse luckily was not harmed. I returned to reading. I do not read aloud very well, but Her Excellency says that it is all the better. So it sends her better to sleep. When she became sleepy, she told me to go. I returned to the compartment I share with Fräulein Debenham.
What time was that?
It was very late. 1:30 or more.
Tell me about Mary Debenham.
She is a very agreeable young lady. She was already asleep when I came in after reading to Her Excellency.
What color is Mademoiselle Debenham's dressing gown?
It is a pale purple. Mauve, I believe the English say.
Did Mademoiselle Debenham leave the room at all last night?
Not after I returned. I sleep lightly, Fräulein. You understand? Should Her Excellency require me.
I would like to fingerprint you.
If you must.
Have you ever been to America?
No, never. I should like to go someday.
Do you know who this man Ratchet really was?
He was not Ratchet?
His name was Cassetti. He was responsible for the death of a small child named Daisy Armstrong.
My God! I have heard of that. The kidnapping. It was wicked. Wicked! We are not so wicked as that in Germany.
Is this your handkerchief, Frau Schmidt?
No, it is not mine.
It has the letter H, you see.
Ah, but it is a lady's handkerchief, that. A very expensive cambric handkerchief, embroidered by hand. It comes from Paris, I should say.
Did you see anyone as you returned to your compartment?
Only an attendant.
He was sitting at the end of the corridor?
No, Fräulein. He came out of one of the compartments in the middle. 2 or 3 doors from Madame la Princesse.
Was it Mrs. Hubbard's compartment?
It may have been.
But I saw him come out. You weren't in the corridor.
I most certainly was. He nearly ran into me, apologized, and hurried off in the direction of the salon car. A bell began ringing, but I do not think he answered it.
Then the bell started ringing?
Yes, Fräulein.
The attendant was Michel.
Our regular attendant? No, Fräulein.
What? What did he look like?
Small, dark. He had a little mustache. His voice, when he said "pardon," was weak and high-pitched, higher than mine. I had never seen him before.
Good day to you, mademoiselle.
Regardez, mademoiselle.
Nothing else to see in there.
Hello, miss. There is more snow coming, I think.
Greta, you know Monsieur Poirot has asked me to help him investigate the murder.
Yeah, I have heard this. It is satisfactory with you?
Very. Will you help me?
I will try.
May I have your passport, please?
It is here.
Greta Sigrid Olsen, 49, of Stockholm.
Of course, I am a missionary now. Nurse at the school in Gemlik, and not much in Sweden.
You gave Mrs. Hubbard a headache powder last night?
Yeah, poor lady with the pain in the head.
That was around 10:40, I believe.
I am not sure.
Did you leave this compartment again after helping Monsieur Poirot?
His ankle is not so very injured, you know. I looked at it again this morning. I think he is not as brave as some of my little children.
After Monsieur Poirot?
I woke several times, of course, but it is because you were peeking out and leaving the compartment, not I.
After that?
When you finally settled down. No, I was very tired from all the activity. I slept. If I had gone out, would you not have noticed?
I'm not sure. You were here in the lower berth.
I slept until the morning. I slept soundly enough that you might have gone out again. I do not know about that, but I myself was sleeping.
Your dressing gown is brown, is it not?
Yeah, you have seen it for yourself. Very comfortable, of Jäger wool.
I would like to fingerprint you.
But of what am I accused?
Nothing, it's only formality.
Oh, I am sorry. Please fingerprint me.
Did you see anyone in the corridor when you took Mrs. Hubbard the medicine?
Not in the corridor, no.
Somewhere else?
I opened the door to the dead man's compartment by mistake. Mr. Ratchet, I was much ashamed.
What did you and Mrs. Hubbard talk about?
The pain in her head. It started at the back and sweep itself forward over her eyes and...
Anything else?
She asked me if the door between her compartment and Mr. Ratchet's is locked. I check it for her.
And?
It is locked.
Did you actually see him?
Yeah, in his bed he was, reading a book.
Did he say anything to you?
He laughed. He invited me. I do not care to repeat what he said. It inflamed my cheeks. I left at once naturally and went into Mrs. Hubbard.
That means you were the last person to see Monsieur Ratchet alive.
I am suspected of all the people aboard the train. I am suspected.
Have you ever been in America?
No. Almost I go once. I was to accompany an invalid lady, but it was cancelled. I much regret it. They are very generous, the Americans. They give much money to schools and hospitals, and they are very practical.
Do you remember hearing of the Armstrong kidnapping case?
No. What was that?
A little girl was kidnapped and murdered. Her mother and an unborn child died in childbirth. A member of the staff committed suicide. Monsieur Ratchet was the man behind the kidnapping.
That there are in the world such evil men. It tries one's faith. The poor mother. My heart aches for her.
Au revoir, mademoiselle.
time, I must say, here I am with information that will solve your mystery for you, and it's hours before you show up. You aren't helping that famous detective, or whatever he is, aren't you?
Yes, madam, I have that honor.
I would think you'd be more on your toes. In America, the police would have arrested the culprit by now on my evidence.
Then let us proceed without delay. May I have your passport, please?
My passport? What do you want my passport for? I'm the witness, not the murderer. What is wrong with you people in this country?
This is Yugoslavia, madam. I am French.
That's what I said.
Your passport. Thank you. You are Caroline Martha Hubbard of Great Neck, is it? Long Island?
That's what it says, doesn't it?
You are traveling to Paris to meet your daughter?
Yes, that I'm supposed to sail for home the day after tomorrow. Though, how can I do that stuck here? I'll never know.
Did you hear any sounds coming from Monsieur Ratchett's room?
Well, earlier I'd asked that Swedish lady, Mrs. Olson, if she had anything for a headache. She's a nurse, you know.
Yes, I know.
Poor soul. Looking for my room, she'd opened the door to Mr. Ratchett's compartment by mistake. He laughed and said something not very nice, I think. But I couldn't make it out. She said, "Oh, I make a mistake. I ashamed to make a mistake," in that bizarre accent of hers. And he laughed again and said something about her being too old. The idea. My late husband, Mr. Hubbard, and I enjoyed conjugal relations right up to the very end.
Anything else?
After that, I heard snoring. Quite loud, like an airplane engine revving up.
What color is your dressing gown?
What an odd question. I have 2 dressing gowns, if you must know. A pink flannel that's kind of cozy on board ship, and a purple silk number that my late husband, Mr. Hubbard, gave me. But what in creation do you want to know that for?
Someone in a scarlet kimono was seen coming out of either your compartment or Monsieur Ratchett's. It is very difficult to tell sometimes which is which when all the doors are closed.
Well, it wasn't mine.
Then it must have been Monsieur Ratchett's.
That wouldn't surprise me any. I thought I heard a voice in there.
I would like to fingerprint you.
What do you have there? A typewriter ribbon? You're going to smear ink from that on my fingers?
That was my intention.
And how do you plan to clean that mess off afterwards?
I have something to clean your hands with.
Cocktail napkins? Good gracious, sweetie. What kind of fleabag investigation are you conducting here anyway?
I appreciate your cooperation. Was it a woman you heard in Monsieur Ratchett's room?
Yes, I think it was.
Did you hear what was said?
Well, I didn't put a glass up to the connecting door and eavesdrop, for heaven's sakes. What sort of a person do you think I am?
When was it you heard this voice?
I have no idea. Sometime after the snoring died.
Was it before or after the train stopped?
After the man in my room that you have so far failed to ask me about. I woke up, heard the voice, and that was that.
Tell me about the man you thought was in your room.
At last. No offense intended, sweetie, but you foreigners do just about everything backwards.
The man?
Well, I was in bed. I woke up. All in the dark it was. And I knew, I tell you, that there was a man in there with me.
In your bed?
In my what? How dare you? No, in my compartment. I was just so scared I couldn't scream. I just lay there and thought, mercy, I'm going to be killed by some foreigner. These nasty trains. I just lay there with my eyes closed and thought of America. Somehow I got my wits about me and I felt about with my hand and I felt.
Yes?
The bell button. I pressed it and pressed, but no one came. I thought, mercy, what if they've murdered every single soul in the train? I went on pressing the bell, and at last, footsteps in the corridor. I dragged on my dressing gown. The pink one. I screamed, "Come in!" and switched on the lights, and would you believe it? There wasn't a soul there.
Michel opened your door and entered?
Yes, although considering the time it took him to arrive, he must have come by dog sled. He seemed to imagine I dreamt the whole thing. I tell you here and now, I'm not one to imagine things.
Michel searched your compartment?
Yes, even under the chair. Although he said there wasn't room for a man to squeeze himself under there. I asked him to check the connecting door.
Was it bolted?
No, but I knew it had been because I asked the Swedish lady to check it when she brought me the headache powder.
Before Michelle arrived, did either door open and close?
Sweetie, my eyes were squeezed shut tighter than a banker's fist. I didn't see. And with the bell making all that racket, the intruder could have dynamited a hole in the wall, and I wouldn't have heard it.
Do you remember the Armstrong kidnapping?
I'll say I do. How that wretch that did it escaped scot-free, I'll never understand. I'd have liked to get my hands on him.
You could have, madam, when the connecting door was unbolted.
You mean Ratchet was the man?
Yes, his real name was Cassetti.
Well, imagine that. Wait till I tell my daughter.
Were you acquainted with the Armstrong family?
Well, they were from New York, too. But no, they moved in a very exclusive circle. I've always heard that Mrs. Armstrong was a perfectly lovely woman and that her husband worshipped her. It was all incredibly sad.
I would like to dust the doorknob of the connecting door for fingerprints.
My, aren't you the little improviser? Be my guest, sweetie. Search the whole place if you'd like. I need a drink.
Mrs. Hubbard, wait. You dropped this.
That's not mine.
I thought as it has the initial H on it.
I've got mine right here. See? It's marked CMH, and it's a sensible thing, not that flimsy, expensive Parisian cambric. What good is a hanky you can't sneeze into?
Quite interesting.
I smashed the lump of coal into a fine powder.
Formidable. Mille pardon, mademoiselle.
A fingerprint. I obtained a clear print and have filed it. Nothing to find here. HMK. A good idea, but I've come up empty.
The bracelet is worthless, mademoiselle. It is copper only. I bought it outside the train station in Istanbul for my arthritis. Take it if you like.
I'm very sorry, Your Highness. I realize how this must look, but I'm only doing the job assigned me. I promise I'll return it to you, if I can.
Ah, then I expect you would like to interrogate me. I believe that is the correct term.
If I may.
But of course, I am suspect just as anyone in the Calais coach must be. I am ready for the third degree.
I have borrowed your passport, Your Highness.
I noticed that as well.
Natalia Dragomirov, 17 Avenue Kleber, Paris. You are traveling home from Istanbul, madame?
Yes. I have been staying at the Austrian embassy. My maid is with me, as you saw in the marketplace.
Could you give me a brief account of your movements last evening?
Nothing could be simpler. After dinner, Schmidt, my maid, read to me. We were interrupted by the train stopping to avoid the avalanche. Then she read aloud to me some more until quite late.
Can you give me an idea of the time?
If I were to guess, I would say it was 1:30.
Has your maid been with you long?
15 years.
Do you consider her trustworthy?
Absolutely. Her people come from an estate of my late husband in Germany.
Forgive the personal nature of this question, madame, but what is the color of your dressing gown?
My dressing gown? It is of blue satin.
I regret to tell you that I must take your fingerprints.
Dear me. With typewriting ribbon? Have you something I may clean my hands with afterwards?
I have some paper napkins.
Thank you, mademoiselle. Those should suit admirably.
You have been in America, I presume, madame?
Many times.
Were you acquainted with a family by the name of Armstrong?
You speak of friends of mine, mademoiselle. Sonia Armstrong was my goddaughter. I was on terms of friendship with her mother, Linda Arden, one of the greatest tragic actresses in the world. As Lady Macbeth, as Nora in A Doll's House, there was no one to touch her. I was not only an admirer of her art, I was a personal friend.
Is Linda Arden dead?
No, she is alive. It is a sort of life. She lives in complete retirement. Her health is very delicate. She must lie on a sofa most of the time.
Mrs. Armstrong had a sister, did she not?
Yes, much younger than Mrs. Armstrong.
And she is alive?
Certainly.
Where is she?
I must ask the reason of these questions. What have they to do with the murder on this train?
The dead man was responsible for the kidnapping and death of Mrs. Armstrong's child.
Ah. In my view, then, this murder is an entirely admirable occurrence. You will pardon my slightly biased point of view.
It is most natural, madame. Where is the younger daughter of Linda Arden, the sister of Mrs. Armstrong?
I've lost touch with the younger generation. I believe she married an Englishman some years ago, but at the moment I cannot recollect the name. Mademoiselle, you will forgive me, but the one you assist, he who guides the investigation, no one has told me his name.
He is Hercule Poirot, madame.
Poirot. Of course. I thought his face was somehow familiar to me. Poirot on this train. It is destiny.
Colonel Arbuthnot, I do not believe we've been properly introduced.
I expect the formalities must be winked at in a case like this, mademoiselle. The attendant told me you are acting on the Frog Detective's behalf.
I am the Frog, monsieur. Hercule Poirot is Belgian.
Apologies, no offense meant. Your accent's a bit of mid-channel, difficult to pick up.
May I have your passport, please?
Of course.
Colonel Francis Gordon Arbuthnot, the Mews, Cheltenham, Royal Northumberland Fusiliers, currently stationed in India.
Yes, on leave.
But you're not traveling on the P&O boat? Why not?
I stopped in Baghdad with the AOC, who happens to be a good friend of mine.
Where did you meet Mademoiselle Debenham?
Miss Debenham? What, in Baghdad, if you must know.
And your opinion of her?
You can take it from me, she's all right. A Puka Sahib.
Can you give me an account of your movements last night?
Yes, I think I can. After dinner, I had a drink in the salon car with young McQueen, the dead man's secretary. Surprisingly knowledgeable about world affairs for an American, even if he had got hold of some tomfool ideas about India. We adjourned to his compartment, let me see, around 2100. That's 9 p.m. You saw us in the Belgrade station courtyard. We stepped out for a bit of fresh air, but with the weather turning foul, that wasn't on.
I will take your fingerprints now.
Will you, by Jove? Well, get on with it then.
What do you and Monsieur McQueen smoke?
McQueen doesn't, now that I think of it. A pipe's my weapon of choice.
What happened after Belgrade?
Around 2200, that's 10 p.m. Ratchet's valet came to fetch him for his employer. He went off for a while.
And what did you do after Monsieur McQueen left you?
Well, I went back to the salon car for a nightcap, didn't I? I was heading to my compartment when I ran into McQueen. Went off back to his room again to continue the natter. I put him straight on India. Learned a bit about the American stock market. Bloody fool's game, if you ask me. Oh, pardon that is to say, my language.
Do not concern yourself.
There, you see. Now I can hear the accent. It comes and goes.
What time did your discussion of world affairs end?
The conversation was so engrossing, by the time I looked at my watch, it was 1:45. McQueen called the attendant to make up his bed. I came back here.
Did anyone pass Monsieur McQueen's room while you were talking?
A good many people, I should think. I wasn't paying attention. The attendant did at one point, and I think I caught a glimpse of you wandering about.
Let us say during the last hour of your conversation.
Really, I can't.
Colonel, you have the soldier's observation for detail.
Hang on. There was a woman, I think.
Was this woman young or old?
Didn't see her, wasn't looking that way. Just a rustle in a scent.
Mademoiselle Debenham?
No, I'd recognize. That is to say, it wasn't. No, it was very strong. Fruit or something.
Can you pinpoint the time the woman passed? What were you discussing?
Let's see, I was detailing the other washout. Stalin's 5-year plan was turning out. It must have been within the last half hour. More definite than that, I can't say.
Have you ever been in America?
Never. Don't want to go.
Did you ever know a Colonel Armstrong?
Armstrong. I've known 2 or 3 Armstrongs. Selby Armstrong. He was killed on the Somme.
I mean the Colonel Armstrong who married an American woman and whose only child was kidnapped and murdered.
Ah, yes. I remember reading about that. Shocking affair. Never actually came across the fellow, but his name came up in the officers' mess, of course. Toby Armstrong. Nice fellow. Everybody liked him. Distinguished career, got the VC, Victoria Cross.
The man who was killed last night was the man responsible for the murder of Colonel Armstrong's child.
Then, in my opinion, the swine got what he deserved, though I would have preferred to see him properly hanged or electrocuted or whatever it is they do over there. Trial by 12 good men and true. Sound system.
Anything you can recall from last night that strikes you as suspicious?
There was one odd thing.
Yes?
As I got back to my compartment, I noticed that the door of the one beyond mine, number 16, well, it wasn't quite closed. The chap inside peered out in a rather furtive sort of way, then quickly pulled the door. Probably nothing in it, but you know what it is. Early hours of the morning, everything very still. The thing had a sinister look, like a detective story.
Thank you, Colonel Arbuthnot.
Not at all. Now, if you don't mind, I think I'll pop along to the salon car.
Don't let me keep you.
You mean to say you intend to stay in my compartment?
Yes.
And search through my belongings?
I'm sorry, but I really must.
But that's... it just isn't. That's bloody irregular. Pardon my French.
I found this button from your tunic in the American lady's compartment.
I have lost no button, mademoiselle. There must be some mistake.
Then perhaps it was dropped by the man she said was in her room.
There was no one there. The lady must have imagined it.
I need to ask you some questions about Monsieur Ratchet's death.
But of course, Mademoiselle Marceau. I will do anything I can to help.
When was the body discovered?
The valet of Monsieur Ratchet, he tapped several times at the door this morning. There was no answer. Then, half an hour ago, Lucien, the waiter, came. He wanted to know if Monsieur was taking déjeuner. It was 11 o'clock, you comprehend.
Continue.
I opened the door for him with my pass key. But there is a chain, too, and that is fastened. There is no answer, and it is very still in there, and so cold. The window open, I borrow the engineer's hammer, and break the chain and go in. Monsieur Ratchet was... it was terrible. The chain was fastened. It must have been suicide?
I'm sorry, Michel. A person does not commit suicide by stabbing himself 12 times.
No, I suppose not.
Did anyone call for you last night after we spoke?
Yes, I made up the bed of the young American gentleman, Mr. Ratchet's secretary.
At what time?
It must have been about a half hour later.
1:45.
About that, yes. The English colonel from number 15 was with him. The colonel went back to his own compartment as I prepared the American gentleman's bed.
Did you see anyone moving about last night after we spoke?
The English colonel returned to his compartment. No one after that.
Did you leave the car at any time last night after Belgrade?
Well, I did go back to talk to Matteo, the attendant in the Athens-Paris car.
When was that?
Not long after 1.
How long were you gone?
A few minutes only. One of my bells rang. You remember, it was the American lady. She had rung several times.
I would like to take your fingerprints.
Of course, mademoiselle. I hope the investigation will be concluded successfully and soon.
What were you doing going through Michelle's belongings?
Your job.
You know I'm assisting Monsieur Poirot.
Sure. Begin the interrogation.
What is your profession?
I'm a salesman. Typewriting ribbons.
Do you always travel first class, Monsieur Hardman?
Sure. The firm pays my traveling expenses.
Where is your destination?
Paris.
And from there?
New York.
What can you tell me about the murder?
Nothing at all.
That is a pity. What were you doing outside Monsieur Ratchet's window?
Okay, there were footprints there. Man's shoe, but not a large one. Size 7, maybe. I followed the tracks, then it looked like whoever made them put on some snowshoes and headed out over that deep snow near the back of the train.
I would like to take your fingerprints.
I guess it's okay.
Perhaps, Monsieur Hardman, you could tell me why I found a blackjack, or sap, as I believe it's called, in your suitcase?
How do you know what it's called?
Crime is a hobby of mine.
Yeah? Well, why don't you try knitting instead? You people are serious about this investigation, aren't you?
Of course. You have heard of Monsieur Poirot?
Yeah, I have. I think I better come clean, or I could find myself in a lot of hot water here.
I would advise you to come clean.
Okay, I don't know anything, like I said. But I ought to know something. That's what makes me sore. I ought to. My passport's a bit of a bluff. That's who I really am.
Please explain.
I showed up at the appointed time. Ratchet put me wise to the situation.
The threatening letters.
Yeah, he showed me 2 of them.
Did Monsieur Ratchet seem alarmed by the letters?
Pretended not to be, but he was rattled all right.
What instructions did he give you?
I was to travel by the same train he did to Paris and see that nobody got him. That's the thing. I did travel by the same train, and in spite of me, somebody did get him. I feel sore about that. Doesn't look any too good for me.
Did he have any idea who the letters were from?
Well, Ratchet described him to me.
What?
Sure. Said he was a small man, dark, with a kind of womanish voice.
Did Monsieur Ratchet not tell you the man's name?
Nope.
Ratchet was Cassetti, the Armstrong murderer.
No kidding. Should have recognized him. I mean, I suppose I saw photos of him in the papers and everything. Well, that explains it. Cassetti made a lot of enemies in the American underworld. He often skipped when the heat was on, leaving his partners in crime to face the music. Some assassin finally caught up with him. Say, I've really fallen down on this thing. And with a famous detective like Mr. Poirot on the case, too. This won't do my rep any good with my boss, Mr. McNeil, if it gets back to him.
I'm in the same predicament, Monsieur Hardman, believe me.
You are? Well, that's good. I mean, bad for you, but... Say, listen, if we could keep the mess I've made out of this thing between ourselves...
I must tell Monsieur Poirot everything.
Oh, sure. I'll have to swallow my professional pride there, but if we can keep it on this side of the Atlantic, maybe, I'd really appreciate it.
I'll see what I can do. Do you know anyone connected with the Armstrong case who matches the description Monsieur Ratchet gave you?
Well, that's hard to say. They're mostly dead, aren't they?
Yes. Mrs. Armstrong, Colonel Armstrong, the nursemaid who threw herself out a window.
I remember now. The nursemaid was suspected. She killed herself even though she was eventually cleared.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm okay. Snow is very bright. So, yeah, that nursemaid was a foreigner, I think. Maybe she had some foreign relations or something. But that wasn't the first time Cassetti had run that kidnapping stunt. I bet there are lots of people had it in for him.
Please tell me your movements after dinner last night.
I played some cards with that Italian guy at the front on the coach. Then when people started turning in, I went back to my room. Stayed up all night. Had my door a bit ajar so I could keep watch. But nobody could see me. You get it?
I understand how it is done, yes. Could you see the attendant from that position?
Sure. He sits on that little seat right past my room.
Can you describe his movements?
Let's see. He answered a couple of bells after the snow stopped us. Went back into the rear coach for 10 minutes or so. Then there was a bell ringing like mad, and he came running back. I got a bit nervous over that. But it was just that talkative American dame raising hell about something or other. Bit later, he headed off to make somebody's bed up. Then he settled in.
Did you see anyone moving up and down the passage?
Nope.
Is there anyone on the train who can confirm your identity?
My credentials are taped to the bottom of the table in my compartment along with my real passport. I'm sure you can find them.
Do you smoke, Monsieur Hardman?
Sure. I've got some cigarettes in my room. Come on by this evening after things quiet down. I can be far more entertaining than that mouse of a woman in your room.
No, thank you. Thank you, Monsieur Hardman. Pierre Michel's passport and an old photograph. I'll just borrow both of them. I would like to take your fingerprints.
What is that you say? I protest. I have nothing to do with this crime.
Everyone must be fingerprinted.
Refuse? No, of course not. Let's get it over with.
Do you have a plan to the Athens-Paris coach?
Si, señorita.
Which rooms are occupied in this car?
The Greek doctor is the only passenger. He is in room 13. I have taken room 15 there to sleep in, and room 16 for my equipment. I hope it is all right. Pierre Michel is using room 11. The chef de cuisine is in 9. Lucien, the waiter, is in 1-2. The engineer is resting in 10 when not attending to the boiler. The fireman rests in 3-4.
What equipment?
I am a ham radio operator. Usually I carry the equipment in the baggage car. There is no time to use it when I'm on duty. And anyway, no power. But when we were stopped so suddenly, I thought to check it and found my telegraph key destroyed. I don't understand it. It was packed carefully. I brought the rest here to my room to keep it safe.
Did anyone pass between this car and the Calais coach last night?
Only Pierre. He came through and we talked for a few minutes about the snow and what it will do to the schedule.
When was this?
Sometime after 1 a.m. A few minutes only. We talked for 10 minutes or so. Then Michel fancied he heard a bell. He opened the doors between the two coaches and we both heard it plainly. A bell, ringing repeatedly. Michel ran to answer it.
You boarded the train in Belgrade?
Si, señorita.
Why were you so late? Your passenger must have boarded by himself, and you yourself almost missed the train.
But this is not so. I was preparing my car as it was being attached. I myself welcomed the Greek doctor and showed him to compartment 13.
I would like to fingerprint you.
I, señorita?
Everyone.
Oh, then si, I will submit.
Au revoir, monsieur. I'll put this into my scrapbook so I can take a closer look at it later.